Hello everybody and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan and thanks for coming to the channel. I'm excited to share with you a project I started a couple days ago when my Lyretail black mollies that I picked up at a swap started dropping fry. And well, I gave some away and brought some to my LFS, and I even gave a few to my mother who I set up a tank for. I still had more, and I'm gonna be honest, I fed the first 20 or 30 little fry to my big fish in the display tank, but I started to think it through and I realized I had space and a desire to do something a little bit more friendly than using these gorgeous fish for feeders. And so I created a fry grow out tank using a 5.5 gallon Aqueon standard aquarium, the kind you get at Petco. I'm a value member or whatever they call it, and so I received a 20% discount. And while it's not the $1 a gallon sale, it's still a great price for a perfectly workable tank. Ideally, this would have been a 10 gallon, but since I'm using it in compromised space in my fish room, you see the rack here I had below. I had been growing out some plants in jars, and well, that was a fun project. I sort of ran out of passion for it, and so I pulled all those plants and I brought them to an LFS and actually was able to get a store credit. So that was exciting, being able to not just toss perfectly great aquarium plants away. But I digress. So here you see about 2 or 3 week old black molly fry. Look at those, jet black, super healthy. There's about a dozen in here. And these are already starting to show a bit of their leer tail and some of the organs, if that's the right word, to differentiate between males and females. They're chewing on a couple Hikari algae wafers, and black mollies love to eat algae. They're an herbivore, and well, they're an omnivore. They'll eat anything, but they're inclined to eat algae, and many people use them in their aquariums for just that purpose. These particular Lyretail black mollies, as I said, I got them in a swap, so they were from parents that had been raised from parents of parents of parents in freshwater systems of breeders who really have a passion for the species and for the hobby. So I know they are both ick-proof and not as vulnerable to the other sensitivities that this species is known for, ick being one of them, shimmying, dropsy. There are other things that poorly kept black mollies can fall prey to. Oftentimes with this particular species, it's because if you bought them from a vendor or at a big box store, they might have been raised in Florida in water that contains some salt, because they can live in salt water, brackish water, and they're often found in those particular environments. So sometimes with those fish, when they're not given any more salt, they don't fare as well. But that isn't the case with these. These have been raised up through and through in fresh water by a quality breeder, and you can just tell even from these fry, jet black, no mutations. All these were born in my tank just a couple of weeks ago, and because I feed live food and quality foods and really care, they're growing super fast. And so that's why I had to set up this grow out. I wish it was a 10, but in the space between the two risers that are helping support the rack system, a 10, it would fit, but then I'd have to lose my brine shrimp hatchery, and I just can't do that. I really need to raise live baby brine shrimp. I love that as a food source, and I highly recommend it to anyone for really any fish. Adult fish of almost any size will go nuts for this food. And so I wanted to have the space to keep that here, and I don't have any more plug space, no more outlets, and no more room really in the fish room excuse the Diet Coke, okay, the obligatory Diet Coke. But so the 5-gallon fit like a glove, and I was able to put in some of my cereal stone, some simple gravel from that I actually picked up a 5-pound sack or something like that at Petco, and I used at the bottom underneath it some Oliver Knott clay-based nutrient soil. It's sort of a European thing, and I had a bag, and I wanted to put that in there mostly in case I decide to aquascape this tank with any kind of stem plant. I wanted to have something that was nutritious for them below the surface, and it's capped, so I don't think it'll affect the water quality too much. Bearing in mind another factor with black mollies is they're very, very closely related to guppies, so they like hard water, and that's why the stone is in here as opposed to something like dragonstone or driftwood, which driftwood would make the water more acidic, softer, and dragonstone wouldn't do anything, but cerastone will harden the water somewhat. And I also used primarily just epiphytes, in this case Anubias, and all of these are attached to pieces of lava rock which you can't see, but it's black, so if you do see it, and here you have some that I used a bit of Java fern with, it doesn't clash too much with the cerastone. And lava rock is porous, so it adds an additional level of biological media. And in this grow out tank, I have a classic sponge filter going. I threw in some floating plants and water sprite from my other aquariums, and I put these fish in about 24 hours after setting up this tank because I was able to seed the aquarium with existing media, which I put a whole bag of gnarly stuff that's been in my sump, and let it kind of unleash all that biological media into the water column, and more importantly onto all the surfaces. And the sponge filter has been soaked in the sump for a couple weeks as well, and of course the lava rock, as I said, adds another dimension. And I took a bit of a chance. I didn't wait 7-10 days. I just went right in and put these baby fish in here using my own tank water to make sure that at least initially there would be no dramatic change to the chemistry. But that's not true cycling. In any event, I'm happy to report it all worked. So all these epiphytes, what's cool about them is if I need to catch all these, and I'll get to that in a moment because I will need to catch all these pretty soon, I can just literally pluck each piece of lava rock with its requisite plant out of the tank, put it in a bucket, and grab the cerastone, and I have an open aquarium that will allow me to easily net these fish. And as they get bigger, they become more, harder to catch. But for some reason, fry are easy to catch. Maybe they just are haven't been cultured to fear about predation. I don't know, but at this stage, it would be relatively easy to catch them, especially if I'm able to move the hardscape. And so that was a key factor. I didn't want to do like I have in this other 5-gallon tank, this kind of glorious Dutch style, and catching them in here would disrupt all these beautiful plants. So this is only a 5-gallon tank, but it's pretty freaking gorgeous, right? And I've got 2 black Moscow guppies in here, and a shit ton of Neocaridina shrimp. There's really quite a few. And I was also worried because the mollies were all in this tank just a few days ago, that as they got older, they'd start just mashing on all those shrimp. Whether they would or wouldn't, I don't know. It wasn't the driving reason for making the change. It was one reason. I've also got Coreodoras in here, and I'm going to move some of these Cories into this tank as well. I added a few Otocinclus, mystery snail. You see them in the corner there. There's a couple of monos in here. there's not a lot of algae for them to feed on, save for the plants that I just put in. Certainly the Zero Stone and gravel have nothing. So I put some topwater plants in, and those stems, I don't think the light is sufficient, so the plants will degrade, and the amanos, as you can see here, there's one right there, will start just nibbling off of that. That's actually two right there, so my strategy is working very well. And I wanted to have, so they're eating that, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. They're eating off of that, and I put in these algae wafers, which the autosynclus will enjoy as much as the black mollies, and so will the amano shrimp, and for that matter, snails too. It's a great supplemental food for a lot of fish, but and invertebrates, but in particular for everything I've got in this aquarium. So my plan is I'm going to catch these as soon as the sexing becomes easier and they have some more size. You know, local fish shops, they don't really want to take your fry because they have to spend the time and money to grow them out, and you'll get a much better trade value if you bring in a group of juveniles to adult fish. I'm not going to wait for these to become full-blown adults, because that's a 2.5 inch, 3 inch fish, and they're boisterous, and this tank is not at all big enough. You could argue it's almost not big enough now, but this is what I'm working with, and I'm going to be extra careful about how I manage it, so I don't anticipate any problems. And so far so good, right? I'll try to capture a picture of their parents, because it's in the tank right up above, with a bunch of other beautiful live bears and some white cloud mountain minnows. There's a tuxedo platies that I got from a breeder, and there's a big fat mama, that black. There's two right there, and they're just dropping these fry that I just showed you. And you can see the gorgeous Lyretail, pretty much jet black. The males are even more spectacular in terms of that Lyretail feature. Let me see if I can find one in here. Yeah, I don't want to waste time looking for fish while I'm talking to you. But this is, these are the parents. And up above here is where I started to see just myriad black Molly Fry. And there's a little one right there. Let's see if I can see. That's probably just a couple days old, and now I have the option to move new drops into this tank as I did before, pseudo Walsted style, heavily, and let them kind of get a little bit bigger if I need to, or frankly just put them in here, especially if I take a dozen of these out, most of them out, all of them out, and just keep doing that process. I found a couple local fish shops that will give me a nice trade-in value, so that's exciting for me and hopefully for them too. It adds a whole wonderful dimension to the hobby, as a lot of you already know, but it's something I hadn't done before, save for here and there. But if I can kind of have a little system, it gives me a wonderful excuse to go visit these local fish shops, which I love to do, and it provides me a pragmatic reason for doing so. So if I need a bag of gravel, some filter floss, you know, the store credit will allow me to get that without reaching into my wallet. But this is what I've done, and I wanted to share it with you. I know I've been talking fast. I'm excited. I'm so happy. I was watching something on the computer, probably one of your channels, out there in fish tube land, and I looked over and they were all just feasting on one algae wafer, and I was like, God, that's so cool. I mean, black mollies were like the first fish I ever got when I was a child, even before guppies or goldfish. For some reason it was a pair of black mollies, and I'll always remember when I first saw those little babies tootling around. It was in a fishbowl, for crying out loud, and they were jet black, and I was just so excited, you know. And now, decades later, I'm sort of reliving that wonderful feeling, and this time with a Lyretail strain. You can even see, like that big one there, you can even see how it's already forming beautiful finnage And of course that jet black color. There's a Neocaridina in there. I think that's a green jade shrimp, or could just be a yellow, I don't know. Actually, when I got the Amanos, it was in there. I didn't buy that. I didn't trade for that. It was just in there, and I didn't know until I got home. So that's a fun little extra credit piece. So there they are, and there's an Otto, and everybody seems to be doing really well. And I've discussed this tank ad nauseum, but I hope you found it useful. As always, everybody, keep your hands in the tank. Ciao for now.